I'm Shannon.
And I'm Mark.
And this is Dirt Sailor, the podcast. Happy Throat Punch Thursday.
Well, happy Throat Punch Thursday.
How are you doing on this fine day?
Doing fantastic. Let's open this show with
a prayer.
A prayer. Give me something.
Lord, we come to you seeking your guidance, seeking the path that you have set before us. Please help us to stay on that path and not follow the path that maybe we want to follow that's not where you're leading us to. We have desires and goals, and these desires of our hearts can sometimes override what you truly wish for us to do. So if you can open our eyes, open our minds, open our hearts to what you have for us.
Absolutely. And Lord, you did give us both a gift of the gab. So I think it's time that we follow that gab and make sure that we're on the right path and we're doing exactly what you want us to do.
Yes, Lord.
Amen.
Amen.
Well, happy Throat Punch Thursday.
Happy Throat Punch Thursday.
Feel much better. That'll help progress things along, I'm certain.
Absolutely. We need to be following what he has for us.
100%. So that means if we have to change and tweak this just a touch, then we will.
Yes, we will.
How do I look on camera?
Oh, you look great.
A lot older on camera than in person.
Yeah, as they say, I have the face for radio, so sorry, guys.
You and me both. I tried putting a meme up there, emoji, but it didn't work.
Yeah, so as some of you may have noticed from our last episode, we had technical difficulties, so I put up the technical difficulty sign. You would have only seen it if you watched our video, and no, the technical difficulties wasn't our face. But we did have some issues with the audio and video, so we apologize for that. We are still working on getting things perfected.
Perfection takes time, and we're slowly getting there.
Slowly but slowly.
You're working very hard. However, why did you put the technical difficulty little logo over my face?
It was a technical difficulty. You'll have to check it out.
Oh, my face was a technical difficulty. You must take a look and see. Was it really covering my face, or am I just making it up?
Comment down below on this episode and then go back and see if you were correct on yes or no.
Absolutely. So where would you like to go today?
Today I would like to start with Tulsi Gabbard.
Tulsi Gabbard.
A name that we have, a person, she is not just a name, a person we have talked about over the years, someone I thought would be a great pick for VP, but it would appear that she may not be making that short list.
She's making the longer of the short list. And that's okay, because I know, as confident as she is by watching her mannerisms and how well spoken she is, and how educated now she is on all things government, she'll have a place in a Trump White House somewhere.
She might be secretary of something.
Or
another appointment.
Or both. She could handle multiple tasks. So we could eliminate several department heads, put her in charge of them.
Run it.
And I know she could merge them together and run them very well. It's very interesting that you and I have talked about Tulsi multiple times on different episodes, but I never really dove into who is Tulsi? Where is she from? What religious background does she have, if she has any at all? Where did she start? Where does she plan on ending? So where was she born?
American Samoa.
She was born in American Samoa from a dad that was born in American Samoa, from American Samoa, but he spent time living in Florida and other places before he migrated back to American Samoa.
And that's very common for a lot of individuals who were born there. For those of you who don't know, many of the individuals born on the island are nationals. They are not U.S. citizens. So in order to get their citizenship, they usually go to, well, typically it's Hawaii, but they may go anywhere inside the United States and then petition to have or file an application to get U.S. status.
Right. Well, her mother was born in Indiana and grew up in Michigan.
And so by birth, even though she was born in American Samoa, I'm not sure if her dad was a U.S. citizen by that time.
Well, he's Samoan and of European ancestry.
Oh, okay. But by her mom, by her parentage, she would be a U.S. citizen.
It was a very multicultural household. And I believe she was number 4 of 5.
Okay.
So she wasn't first.
She wasn't last. She's also not the middle, but she's a middle child.
She's a middle. Yes. It's very interesting also that her mother was very interested in Hinduism.
Okay.
So they practiced, would it be called Hindu?
I'm not sure.
I believe that it's called Hindu. And her name actually is derived from Hinduism.
Okay.
And it has a very unique name. During her young life, she wasn't sure if she wanted to follow that path. But as she got older, she actually did follow the path. And to this day, I believe she still follows.
So she's practicing.
Yes. And that's okay.
We all have different backgrounds. That's the great thing about the United States is we can all have different backgrounds and we shouldn't be persecuted for it.
Absolutely not. And I know we're Christian. We have Christian beliefs. Other folks have different beliefs in their mindset and their upbringing and their life. That's okay. But we all merge pretty much in the same spot, though, because she loves America.
Yes.
She has learned a lot over the years from being a state house representative to a multi-reelected congressperson or woman. She has run for president, and she put a shellacking during the debates on our current VP.
Yes, that she did. She did a really good job. She's an excellent orator.
Yes, and that's the thing I've learned to really like about her is the fact that she's on point. Every YouTube channel or every news outlet that I see her on giving her advice on how she would fix the country, she is on point every single time. She does not deviate from that. She does not tell one audience, I would do ABC.
So she doesn't tell people what she thinks they want to hear.
Correct.
Which is a good...
Yes, and she's actually spoken about that recently, about debates, and how she believes that you should be sitting in the forum that we're in right now, the two persons running against each other, and you should have a civil, honest debate as to how you would fix things, not these toe-the-line sentences or paragraphs that they're given by their handlers. Well, how would you fix America? Well, I would start by, thank you very much.
Yeah, they just read down the line.
They just go right down the list, and they move from one section to the next. They don't actually put in their heart during the debates because it's 30 to 60-second clips what they're all about. Interesting thing about Tulsi, it's kind of like a wave. She won her first election when she was 21 into a state house in Hawaii. I believe it was the 2nd district is where she was elected to. And it was, from what I read and understood, was a 5-way runoff. It made its way down to her and one other individual. The other individual was a doctor who had this whole page of accomplishments that he had had during his lifetime because he was much older. And he actually made up flyers that had her on the left side, had him on the right side with all these accomplishments. Her, the only line was like 21 years old. That's it. Zero experience. And that actually helped her.
Did it?
Yes. Because she was able to garner not only the older vote, all the young, I don't know if they were millennials then or what group they were from, but she was able to garner a very high percentage of.
Because they saw it as an attack. Hey, you're young, so
Yes.
therefore you can't do anything.
Yes. One of the things that highlighted her experience when running for that office was she went door to door. She knocked on every single door in that district.
Good for her.
At least 3 times.
Good for her.
Yes. So the person she was running against obviously was arrogant.
Handed out a flyer, said this is enough for the
Yeah.
people.
Thought, hey, you minions, this is me, this is her. Vote for me. You're getting, A grade beef here, and you're getting nothing with her. Well, she proved them wrong. And it's obvious through her career, as after that, when she ran for Congress and won, she was picked for all kinds of subcommittees. Her second term, more subcommittees. She introduced legislation 3 times that President Obama, Congress approved. He signed the laws. They're into law now. When she decided, let me kind of back up and go forward. After 9/11, she decided it was her civic duty to not only serve, she wanted to serve the military as well. So her heart was telling her, join the military. So she joined the Hawaii National Guard. She then traveled a couple years later over to Iraq for a year, where she was in a medical unit, came back home, went back into office, went to college, because a lot of people said, you have to have a degree. You're just a high school graduate. You have to have a college degree. She went to Hawaii Pacific, earned her bachelor's. She went into a accelerated officer program. She became an officer. Then she deployed again for a year, but she was in charge of an MP force. So she is one that probably has more qualifications in that area to run our country than our current sitting VP, our current president.
Yes.
Trump would be kind of up in the air because he at least went to a military academy.
And so there's that. He's been commander in chief before, but he has the business side of things too. Not saying, so we have, everyone can't be everything for everybody, and a person's not going to have every, box checked. But in that regard, they would actually both be complementary for each other, covering both sides.
Absolutely. That's why during all the debates and listening to her from 2020 till now, or 2021, I think she's perfect for the position.
Do you think that she would be too strong-minded?
No.
For Trump?
No. Because they've already worked together when she was in office and he was president. She understands, I believe, his mindset and psyche. That's why when he was impeached the first time, she only voted present. She did not vote to impeach. And she came up with an outstanding reason as to why we can't do this, because it's just going to move on to when the Democrats are in office. Same thing's going to happen to them.
It'll just keep going.
Keep going back and forth.
Yeah.
She didn't feel that was necessary at all.
She has quite the history and quite the potential future too.
She does. And it's interesting that a lot of congressmen and women, when they get out of office, they end up becoming lobbyists.
Yes.
And they make millions.
Yes.
And millions. She did not. She has only made money off of mostly her book sales.
Okay.
And having a speaking career, things like that, because she's into speaking as well, and she gets paid for speaking engagements, I'm sure. Probably not as much as Hillary.
Probably not.
Probably not as much as Michelle Obama. which I think combined, she's more intellectual than the two of them.
Well, you have 2 first ladies versus a congresswoman. Who do you want to hear from? I know she was also, Clinton was also a senator.
And she was a senator by proxy. I strongly believe that had her husband not been the president of the United States, she would have never moved to New York so she could take up residency to actually run.
Mm-hmm.
So that's that old fake news thing, fake thing.
Ooh, fake news.
Because you can tell even when she was Secretary of State how she botched that. And we're not going to get into the whole Benghazi and all that. That's a horse we'll ride a different day.
Yes.
So let me go to committees real quick.
Okay,
just to kind of throw those out there. The committees that Gabby was on. Gabbard.
Tulsi
Gabbard.
Your BFF, Tulsi.
Yes, she is. Actually, she was on Committee on Homeland Security, Committee on Armed Services, Subcommittee on Readiness, Subcommittee on Border and Maritime Security, Subcommittee on Emerging Threats and Capabilities, Committee on Foreign Affairs, Subcommittee on Asia and the Pacific, Subcommittee on the Middle East and North Africa, Committee on Financial Services, Subcommittee on National Security, Subcommittee on Diversity and Inclusion.
Just got quite a bit going. Had.
Yes. It's amazing. Congressional Progressive Caucus, Congressional Asian Pacific American Caucus, Congressional Next Generation 911 Caucus, Medicare for All Caucus, U.S. Japan Caucus. She also spoke for the DNC when Mr. Obama scratched that. I believe it was either Mr. Obama or Biden. She was a guest speaker during the convention.
Okay.
So, and it's interesting that she is now an independent.
Yeah, she left the party. Or did the party leave her?
She was so smart that she figured things out. She figured out that there's one half of one group that love the country and want nothing more than to see us succeed. There's another group that she was part of that one half of that wants to see us basically as socialists or communists.
Well, I mean, being on the Medicare for All subcommittee, that's one of those leaning that way committees.
Yes. Yep. So I got a man crush on her, I guess you'd call it, or something, because I like people.
Well, you're a man who has a crush.
Has a crush on
a woman.
Somebody.
So would that be a woman crush or a man crush?
Whatever.
Just kidding.
Somebody I've never met in my life, but I can read and understand what she's all about because I'm a simple guy. And she's a highly educated person, but she's a simple person because she's only for America and the American people. The Constitution of the United States, which in itself for her is kind of surprising because if you parse out a lot of Pacific Islanders, especially a lot of Hawaiians, they don't want that. They want their island back. So
yes.
They want autonomy from America.
Yes.
And some rights, some of the older generation I can see because they feel like the island was stolen from them.
Yes.
And I don't have a disagreement with that at all. That's their thing. I don't have a horse in that race because I'm not a Pacific Islander and my family was not doing that at that time. It's not a thing.
Okay, so yeah, we can get into stolen lands and all of that another time. I'm not as prepared. I do have a lot of opinions on that, and I have been researching a little more into a lot of these requests for reparations, and I think that relates to that. But we will talk about that on a future episode. But something that I have been wanting to cover has to do with our contempt of Congress that we just had.
Yours and my contempt for Congress,
yeah.
Or their contempt
of us.
Yes.
No. So the DOJ has just come out and said they will not be prosecuting Attorney General Merrick Garland. He was referred. for a contempt of Congress charge. But the DOJ has claimed that his refusal to hand over the recorded tapes of Joe Biden and Robert Hur serve no legitimate purpose, that he had a right to refuse, and so there is no legitimate purpose in a prosecution. There is nothing to prosecute. A last-minute claim by Biden is that there's executive privilege, so therefore the tapes cannot be released. So there was a claim that the transcripts have already been produced and that there is no need for the audio tapes because you can just read it. And part of Merrick Garland's argument, the argument was that if they release the tape, then they can use those tapes to deep fake the conversation, and then deep fakes will get out there.
So can you do deep fakes with text as well?
So
written text?
Well, now that they have the written text, it won't turn out exactly the same because we don't know how long each pause was in between words. We did find out through statements by the Attorney General under oath. Well, I assume he was under oath, so that's my assumption. When he was in front of Congress, saying that a career individual listened to the audio, read the transcripts, and basically certified that they are one and the same with exception. Ahs, repetitious ands, and repetitious I's were removed. And that's supposed to be done for readability of the transcripts. My issue on that part is if a person sits there and goes, and I can do this 47 more times, but you remove it and only put one, does it look like the person's confused or that they were just having a conversation, said, and then kept going?
They would make it appear like it was just a normal conversation.
And part of the claim is if he is such a feeble old man that's going to be sympathetic in front of a jury, which is why Robert Hur didn't recommend charges, this could either be proof positive that he really was this feeble old man that couldn't carry on a conversation and answer questions, or if they released it, it would show that my son, yes, during 1997, blah, 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 that he only said one time. Right. The pauses were inconsequential. So we have on one hand where we're prosecuting a former sitting president for having had documents illegally, according to the government, in his possession that were classified. And then on the other hand, a person's too feeble and old-minded for him to get prosecuted for the very same thing. When somebody defies a congressional subpoena, in this case, it was the Attorney General, our DOJ says, no dice, we're not going to prosecute.
So we've talked about the scales of justice, and they're definitely not equal here.
Correct. And I do want to note some of the recent cases. Peter Navarro, arrested for not complying with a congressional subpoena, 4-month prison sentence. Steve Bannon, arrested for not complying with a congressional subpoena, 4-month prison sentence. Mark Meadow, arrested for contempt of Congress. Hunter Biden, defied a congressional subpoena, not arrested. Eric Holder, defied a congressional subpoena, not arrested. Lois Lerner, defied a congressional subpoena, not arrested. Hillary Clinton, defied a congressional subpoena, not arrested. Are we seeing a little bit of a pattern? Now it's Merrick Garland, defied a congressional subpoena.
Yes, I think if I ever go into politics full time and I'm going to go back and work in D.C.
Are you going to be a Democrat?
I'm going to change myself to a Dim. And then when I come back to California or whatever state I happen to reside in at that time, I'll change to an R or an I or a C, communist. This is corrupt at the highest level. We know it is. Everybody can see it. The problem is nobody's willing to stand up
and do anything about it.
And
Absolutely. As we talked about on last week's podcast, the Republicans, the ones who are in charge of the committees, will stand up and hem and haw and say we need to do something about it. And then it's 8 years later and everybody's forgotten that it ever happened.
And that's the other half that I'm talking about, that you have out of 2 holes, You take two of the halves, you put them together, half from the left, half from the right. They're dinner buddies. They're drinking buddies. They're the Pelosi's, the Schumers, the Lindsey Grahamnesties.
Let's talk about your buddy, Tucker Carlson, who readily admitted that he ran in the same circles as Hunter Biden. Tucker Carlson had reached out to Hunter Biden to get I believe it was a recommendation letter for his kid for college.
Yes.
They do run in the same circles. However, it doesn't mean that they're unwilling to tell the truth, because if you look at Tucker Carlson, he has been coming out with a lot of truth. And he's never hidden the fact. He didn't try to hide the fact. Whereas others will say like, oh, I would never have anything to do with him. And then come to find out they have everything to do with him. They eat together. They dine together, drink together.
Relatives that are married, they're all intertwined.
Right.
Yes,
They're all, yes.
So as just normal John Q citizens, John Q public that does not have control of the internet, does not have control of the news cycles, that cannot make changes without millions behind you, how do you do it? You try to use this venue here. The problem is if you start scoring dart points or you start getting to people, then
you get shadow banned.
You get cut off.
And so I will say we were on one of our social media platforms. We actually got stopped from being able to advertise because we were saying certain words. So I could no longer advertise our podcast on the platform. And yeah, I was getting advertised to by people who were willing to say the opposite of what I was saying, even after proven not truthful. Not just what I was saying, what you were saying too. Right. But even after being proven not truthful, they never got stopped. They never got banned. Yes.
And here's one of your case in points with what I said all along about COVID. And I know we're not going COVID today. We'll do that at a later date. But this goes directly to DOJ and not prosecuting and being referred for prosecution. They're having subcommittee meetings now as we speak about the origins of COVID. And you have somebody like Fauci, Dr. F, who's been in this game for 50 years, is partially responsible for the deaths.
Yes.
And I'll say it, for the deaths of 1 million people in America and millions across the world. He's not single-handedly responsible, but he is part of that pie. He is a piece.
Yes.
He will never be prosecuted. They will not take away his retirement. They will not take away all the funding that he made. He will just slide on into retirement. I know he's like 80 years old, but they'll just let him walk right out the door with nothing, no penalties. You jump online, make a statement that, hey, this is a plot to take out, fill in the blank. Next thing you know, you have a visitation from your local police, your local Leo, as they call them. You have a visitation from the FBI. Your social media sites get shut down, and you're the small fish. That's why it takes millions. That's one area or avenue I believe in that statement that Hillary made many moons ago about raising our children, which stay away from my kids and my grandkids.
Yeah.
It takes a village to thump people like that, to be able to hammer them.
Right. They need to be out of public service or not doing any sort of public service. I don't know. Yeah. Black hole. I don't know how you think that removing vocal cords of cute dogs and having them attacked by sand fleas furthers anything, but I digress.
That's okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So what I would like to talk about is immigration, because it has been all over the news. Well, for the last few years, but the last week or so, big news items with regard to immigration have hit. So one of those would be that the Biden administration has just announced that they will not deport those who are married to a United States citizen or a child who has a parent married to a United States citizen, so like a step parent. They will no longer be deporting them, and they will not have to go to their home country to fix their immigration papers. So with IRA, the immigration act that is currently governing our whole system, a person who had committed an illegal entry, came, settled, gets married, they cannot adjust their status to a lawful permanent resident here. They have to go to their home country and basically apply for permission to re-enter at a form that says, I'm sorry, I did do that. I lived illegally. Please forgive me. I won't get into all the details on how that works, but suffice it to say they usually had to go home. Very rare circumstance that they wouldn't. And that's people who illegally or unlawfully entered the United States. Biden has now said that he will let them adjust status here. Not going to deport them and working on letting them adjust status. They expect that will be for about 500,000 to 550,000 that it will help to not have to leave. So that's one big news item that was just announced, and why that's important. It's now giving a carve out for certain people that don't have to follow the law. They already didn't follow the law, but now they don't have to follow what Congress mandated that they do in these cases. Sort of like what Obama did with DACA.
Right. And so they need to take that to court, rush it up the chain, and try to get it into the Supreme Court and have a ruling on it.
Yeah. So another thing that this will impact, you have to have been in the United States already 10 years unlawfully in order to qualify. And so it seems like it's reaching back and helping all the DACA people. DACA was 2012, and we're in 2024, so that's a 12-year look back, but it seems like it's meant to help those individuals, as well as others who maybe never, who didn't qualify for DACA.
And isn't it okay to help these people as long as you help your own citizens first and you don't push them into second-class citizenship?
So, as one thing, yes, I believe that you should help your own people first. You're not going to be a country if you tell your countrymen to go away. Like, I guess you'd be a new country full of not your countrymen. But I have a big problem with it when you say set aside the law and do what I tell you. I don't like that. And I believe that we should go back to our immigration laws and fix the broken parts. To have immigration reform, it's such a dirty word, and it's often co-opted by people who are left-leaning to mean that you need to give amnesty for everybody here, and you need to just get over the fact we need to give green cards and you give citizenship to everybody who's here. You can't deport them all, so therefore welcome them all. No borders, open borders, everybody comes. And that to me is what I think of when I think of immigration reform, because it's been made dirty.
Right. So the ones that have been here 10 years working in the shadows, I don't care what them people say, oh, they all pay taxes. No, they don't. So do we go after them and make sure that they pay back taxes and they pay fines and penalties? Or are they going to grant amnesty on all of that?
So in our caveats and carve-outs, in the past, so under Bush, there was a amnesty sort of given to families. It was for family members. So you had to have somebody who could file for you, and it had to be a specific relationship, and you paid $1,000 fine. They basically made it $1,000 application fee, but you paid $1,000 fine. So they have done that in the past. They say, okay, well, in order for you to write your status, you're going to pay this fee or fine, and then you can file the paperwork and come, or, be made a lawful permanent resident, as it were. I think that we need reform because a lot of our laws don't necessarily work together. A lot you can end up penalized when your parent did the wrong action. So for instance, if I'm 2 years old and my parent brings me into the United States illegally, I have no status, I unlawfully entered, I as a 2-year-old didn't make that choice. But as soon as you hit 18, you start accruing unlawful presence. As soon as you hit 19, it triggers. You've been here for over a year now. After 18. And then if you leave the country, you get the bar that gets placed, and then you have to ask for special permission, file certain forms. I don't think that we should be placing on the children what the parents did to them.
That burden. I'll agree with that.
And so they might not even know until much into adulthood too.
Don't we know somebody in our circle that happened to?
Yes, they were in their 20s, late 20s, I want to say, or possibly early 30s. And they were, oh, I'm going to do this. And then their parents said, you can't because, and then reasons. So yes, that was a friend that we have.
And I agree with that you cannot penalize a child for an adult's actions.
Yeah. So again, immigration reform is such a dirty phrase, but we really could use it. And if in the United States, we want to say, hey, if you're married to a U.S. citizen, you can adjust status here. Doesn't matter how you came. Put that in the law. Make that the law. I was upset also. I was working for immigration at the time when DACA was put into place because it put all these people into kind of a weird limbo. They didn't really have status, but they could get a work permit, but they still couldn't necessarily adjust to any lawful permanent status. And it was gross. I don't know. I just found it gross. I didn't like that it was circumventing the law, and they were using something that was meant for either CBP or ICE, where they have discretion to defer somebody's deportation for a very valid reason. So for instance, they catch mom or dad in an immigration raid and they're working and their child is in the hospital, sick. They might defer deporting them until child gets better. Very good reason to not deport
under
someone.
certain circumstances. Yes.
And so President Obama used that authority to just blanket grant, we're not going to go after anyone. And then they just made up the rules as they went. So this is another one where they're, oh, okay, you have to have been here for more than 10 years. Oh, if you're married to this person. Oh, if your step parent is this person. We're starting to do it again. We're just going to kind of make up the rules. And it's one thing that really bothers me. So
maybe we should go back to Ellis Island and bring people in through there. And if you don't come with money or enough to sustain, or you don't have a relative here, you go home.
So we do have what's called public charge, and that has been on the books for, oh goodness, we're at over 100 years now that public charge has been on the books. Our family was stopped at Ellis Island for potentially being public charges.
Yes.
We have it. So under Obama, and I don't know about all the years prior, under Obama, they quit enforcing public charge. Under Trump, when we got new leadership, and I don't just mean Trump, I mean like the leadership of Department of Homeland Security and USCIS, they said, whatever the laws are, enforce them. Whatever somebody made up as a policy not to enforce, place that aside. Enforce the law, move forward. So we started enforcing public charge. If you don't have enough money, or if a person who's sponsoring you doesn't have enough money and you can't get somebody on the record to say, I will help support you and you won't be on the public dole, so to speak, then we allow you in. If you don't like the law, change it. Again, just not enforcing it, then you get mad when the other side enforces it and you say they're being mean.
And aren't we supposed to be, as Americans, a nation of laws?
We're supposed to be. So if you're not going to enforce these laws, why do you enforce the other laws?
Well, here's the definition, and this ties into Seattle, Washington, and immigration up there.
Okay.
So, definition of law. The system of rules which a particular country or community recognizes as regulating the actions of its members, and which it may enforce by the imposition of penalties, which means you break the law.
There's going to be
that's on the books. There's going to be consequences. So we had a state and a city, Seattle, Washington.
One of them sanctuaries?
Yes, that became a sanctuary city. Did not want to enforce laws. They defunded the police. Over 500 officers left. And now they The city council's answer to this is they are going to hire illegal immigrants to be law enforcement officers.
So would you hire an arsonist to be a law enforcement officer?
I would not.
Would you hire a rapist to be a
I would not.
So we're picking and choosing which crimes we are willing to accept. And it is a crime. To illegally cross the border is a crime. And for all of those out there who say, oh, but they're filing for amnesty. Amnesty is abused. They call it amnesty. They have no real claim to amnesty. That's one of those words that doesn't mean what you think that means. So for instance, I said amnesty, they're filing for asylum. My brain wasn't braining.
That's okay.
So they're filing for asylum. That word doesn't mean what you think it means. Asylum is not because you want a better life and you can't make as much money, or you want to make more, or you want a different job opportunity than is available. So we just had another case that went up to the Supreme Court. It was decided 5-4. And again, this is illegal immigration, illegal immigrants who were fighting being deported. They were removed, what's called in absentia. They didn't show up to their court date. Why it's important? Because under the Illegal Immigration Reform and Immigration Responsibility Act, or IRA, it was considered questionable whether the notices to appear that were given to these people who were illegally crossing the border, whether they were sufficient and they met the requirements of the law, because the government started putting to be determined in the time, date, location. It didn't have a court date, court time, and a court location.
Boy, wouldn't it be nice to do that on your taxes? You just send the form in. I'm going to send it in TBD, to be determined, at my convenience.
Part of this is because they have so many people crossing the border. So many people crossing the border that they can't give them all court dates. So typically, whatever sector they cross in, whatever the nearest jurisdiction, they would grab a court date, time, location, type it into the form, serve, and then let the person go. Then that person who may have crossed in, let's just say Texas, that's where they got crossed. They then go up to Seattle, Washington, let's say.
There is no country in the world that's sustainable doing things like this.
No. But once they get up there, they transfer the location to the new court, and that takes up a lot of time, effort, energy, a lot of that. So what they started doing, since there were so many people, instead of grabbing those court dates, because when you grab them in the local jurisdiction, takes them away from others, but then they open back up as soon as you transfer. So they gave them to be determined. They get to their final location, and then the government serves them with a new notice with a date, time, and location. So second notice was designed to cure the deficiencies of the first. Right. Well, it goes all the way up to the Supreme Court, because the argument is that by giving them a deficient notice, they cannot be removed in absentia. But also they're saying that the second notice can never cure it, that only the first notice, basically you got one time. So it's understandable that if somebody got a to be determined and then never received an updated notice with date, time, location, why they would have an argument under not being removed in absentia. Totally understandable. But this court case included people who were then served with a corrected, second notice, date, time, location. And they were still arguing that it could never be cured and they could never be removed in that regard. Court 5-4 said that the second notice was sufficient. And it's just really interesting on the argument that it can never be cured. I will say, though, a third of the cases are in absentia. But if I told you that I'm Bob Smith when I cross the border and I'm going to 123 Main Street.
That's my name. My fake name.
And you try to update serve me notice where I said I was going to go, well, my name's not really Bob Smith and I'm not really going to 123 Main Street because I still want to fly under the radar. I don't expect that I have a good asylum claim and I just want to get in. What do?
You do exactly what they're doing. We're seeing it unfold right before our very eyes. And when you do bring it to light, you're a racist, bigot, homophobe. You don't like people of other countries. On and on and on. We've pounded that horse too multiple times.
Yes, and it takes time to pull those court dates. And while you may say, well, what does it matter if it takes them 10 minutes? Well, 10 minutes, if you have 100 people, that's 1,000 minutes. We have had 7.4 million known who are living here in the U.S. while awaiting their hearing, their potential deportation. 7.4 million known. All of the people that have come in, if they got an NTA, even if it was to be determined, 10 minutes, an hour, it's government, computer systems can be finicky. What if it's down for half a day while they're trying to process in hundreds of people? They only have so long to hold them, and they only have so much space to hold them.
Yes. So 2 things. Number 1, what happened to our Filipino people that have been trying to come into this country for 20 years?
So not just our lovely people from the Philippines, but it's right around 4 million. The number of individuals who are on our wait list for a visa.
So we let a bunch of people jump ahead of the line.
Almost double.
Yes, almost
Or just
double.
about double.
Number 2, could you, knowing what you know, had you not had a medical issue in your life that kneecapped you from being in the position you were in and you had to stop, refocus, and do something different, could you still work for USCIS under these conditions, knowing that your primary emphasis is following the law?
I would probably say no. I don't think I could, knowing that the answer right now is you have to not enforce the law sometimes.
Isn't it interesting that you worked and lived in a state that was predominantly Democrat, and they seem to be the most forceful at applying law there to make sure that who was supposed to be here was here,
Right.
who was illegitimate was removed, and you guys were able to focus and see through all of the roadblocks and see who was really faking and who was honest, and that whole game, being able to unpack that whole thing.
It's really interesting. So I've been on many sides of it throughout the years. I was on just the paperwork side for a lot of my years. And it was quite the change to go and actually interview people, because you can look at the paper. You can say, well, this looks like it's in order. Got a copy of a birth certificate, copy of a marriage certificate, got this, everything looks like it's in order. But once you look at a person and they have to remember what's in that file.
Yes. And here you go. Okay, I'm going to hold you right there because you just explained something perfectly. That Merrick Garland in the DOJ, as it relates to the audio tape of Joe Biden, you just
Good
reinforced and proved that you have to have the two so you can marry them together to see what the state of mind was and exactly what was going on, because they can manipulate that text any way they choose. If you would have been able to see and hear both, we would know his state of mind. And if you look at the last 3 videos of him, one over, I believe he was in France, one at the Juneteenth celebration
yes, at the White House,
and then one at the fundraiser in Hollywood. It's pathetic because he is a lost deer in all 3 of them. The man's 81 years old. He's had brain issues. He's had aneurysms. He's under the pressure of trying to be in charge of what's supposedly the most powerful country in the world. And you have a bunch of people behind him propping him up and holding him up when he has no business being where he's at. And they should have known this a year ago. And instead of trying to kneecap a candidate and a former president with all these frivolous lawsuits, They should have removed their guy and put someone else in place. It's pathetic when you have 350 million people-ish in this country, and this is the best that one side or the other has to offer.
You're telling me we don't have 1 million? We don't have 100,000? We don't have 50,000
even
that they could put in there?
Yes.
That would be...
Even Hillary, in my opinion, sucks. However, she
would be better
than him.
She's had her moments too,
Yes.
but not nearly.
No.
Our whole aging population has had their moments.
100%.
Trump has had his moments. We saw Mitch McConnell have his moments. We've seen Hillary Clinton have her moments. And what does that tell us? We need people without these moments.
Yes,
we should have better candidates.
And it tells me that a handful of families and people have this thing locked down.
They have
and
the power.
Every once in a while you have an outlier like Trump or even Obama, because until they saw him and realized what a good orator he was nobody.
He wasn't their people.
Nobody knew who he was.
Yeah, he wasn't their people.
As Bill Clinton and Joe Biden and somebody else had said about him at one time, and that video miraculously disappeared. 10 years prior to him running for Senate, he would have been serving us tea.
Yes, because Joe Biden's a racist.
Yes, he is.
He's not even a closeted racist. No. He's been allowed to be a racist all out there, but then he gets to do that white privilege thing where you say, oh, but I have black friends.
Yeah, he has a history. He never has hidden his history, and you can't lie about it because it's there for everybody to see. Not like Mr. Clinton, where he said, the video's fake. Give me the definition it is. I never pointed his finger. Had blah, 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 blah with that woman.
So with Biden, okay, so we're swinging over this way. And those videos, well, his press secretary has come out to say those are deep fakes and cheap fakes.
Well, and here's the thing about that. The one in France that they're talking about, that is not Fox News that puts out the video. It's not CNN, ABC, NBC. That is either their pool of cameramen or it's a worldview.
It was a press pool or it was whoever specifically hired for their pressers and their events. I mean, they were literally standing right next to 7 of the most powerful people, 8, 9, however many was in that group of some of the most powerful people. And you're telling me they let a cameraman who's just all willy-nilly Fox News walk right up and film?
Yeah.
I don't think so.
No.
I don't think so.
No,
So she is trying to make us believe, because this is what they do. This is spin zone time, right? Or spin time. That watching him wander off. Now the claim on that one, oh, but he saw some other skydivers and he gave them thumbs up. And if you watch the video, he kind of wander, turns, thumbs up, stands, and then they all just kind of start walking around and coaxing him back in. And then with the one in Los Angeles, they said that was a fake. And then they released another video that was actually, because the first video that I saw was like a person in the audience is filming. And then another video was very professional, and it was like the venue had filmed because it had big camera angles and all of that stuff. Well, when you watch it, when it gets to the point where Obama grabs the hand of Biden, which is what we saw in the other video, it does a wide, extremely wide pan out shot, and like a head is almost, somebody's head is blocking the view of that grab. Kind of weird. And he's like, oh, it never happened. Look at this picture. It's like, well, why were you so far up close to both of those? And then as soon as that hand grab happens, it's like the widest angle shot you could possibly get. And you're telling me that that is proof positive that it never happened. But many people with their cameras release different angles of the same thing happening.
And here is the spoiler. Spoiler alert, by the way. So, I follow a lot of YouTube people.
Yes.
A lot of former Navy SEALs, Marine Recon, Army Rangers, on and on and on. All kinds of frogmen. Well, it just so happens that one of the guys I follow, who was SEAL Team 6 member, very good guy, very honest guy, was there.
Okay, so what did he see with his own eyes?
Exactly what you see when you watch the video with him turning around, staring off into outer space, And then whoever that other leader was going up and tapping him, getting him to turn around and go back and focus on the paratrooper that's right in front of them.
And I think it was the lead. Yeah, I can't remember which leader that was, but Obama did the same thing. He was frozen in Los Angeles, and then he had to go grab his hand. And then there was a follow-up video that I saw of somebody else, because that one had cut off, where he's like escorting him with his hand on his back or near him, trying to keep him escorted off the stage.
You know, it's okay to admit that an 81-year-old man that's had brain aneurysms is not all there. It's okay. It's okay to remove him.
So, yeah.
They should have plenty of people in the bullpen. And if
Yes.
Trump wins and he's president for the next 4 years, that gives the DNC 4 years to glean out into the 75 million Democrats and find a good,
pick a better one.
young, legitimate candidate. Problem is there. I now believe that he being Trump is not going to pick Tulsi because they're looking at the numbers. They're going off of sheer numbers and who can help him.
Who can pull.
And generally, vice presidential candidates pull 0. However, Mr.
Tim Scott
can pull him up to 5%.
Yeah, I would see him. He's I've enjoyed watching him speak, and
he's another super individual that I guess I could have a man crush on him too if I learned his history, but he's a very, very smart person, way smarter than I am. That's why he's there. I'm here in redneck Fresno. I think the two of them would make a really good team. And if he surrounds himself with people like Tulsi and others that actually want to fix the government, because I heard her talk last night about how she would go in and audit every single department. And not just how much money are you spending. Are you a legitimate department? Do we need you? Can we merge you with you and eliminate positions that can be eliminated without their unions? We've been through that.
Even with the government can size down, and they have at various points in time, if they're going to close down a military base as an example, you size down. Those individuals are then given the opportunity to have priority at other jobs that are currently open. So we do have this ability, if we determine that we are oversized, to downsize.
And that's what you do with, quote, the deep state.
You downsize all their jobs.
You downsize them, and we've talked about that. I don't care if you put them in a room half the size of the one we're in right now. You pay them to do nothing. I don't want you emailing on a government website. I don't want you communicating. This is your job. We're going to pay you. That's all you're doing for the next 4 years.
Yeah, we do have a lot of individuals. So going back to my former job, we have a lot of individuals who just want to put their head down, do what they've been hired to do. And as I've said before, I didn't want to have feelings about I'm passionate. I have a lot of feelings on how, or not just feelings, but beliefs on how we can improve our immigration system. It is a topic that I am passionate about, but when I was at work, it would not be fair if I had feelings for one applicant over the other, and then I let something slide. So right benefit, right immigrant, right time is what I went by.
And that's good. And I've tried to adjust to my supervisory style over the years, going from older employees, and since I'm an older person, different generational management styles, and telling people, you're just here to do a job. You're getting paid. Do your job. Smile. Go home at the end of the day. Unfortunately, the younger group we have now, they want you to coddle them as if they're one of your own kids, or it's a cradle to grave thing.
Well, I believe in raising people up. So as a supervisor, I did want to help my people cultivate themselves in their career, but they had to be the one to want it. I can present opportunity for you. So if you had an employee that came up and said, hey, I'm doing A, I would love to do B. Do you have any suggestions on how I can go from A to B? And you might say, yeah, I do actually, because I've been here long enough. I know the process. Here's the packet. Here's the information. Here's how to get from A to B. You can't train yourself and then, through osmosis,
Right.
as I like to joke, they get the knowledge. You can't sit right next to
Yeah,
them
I've
saying,
tried that. It doesn't work.
Are you reading? Are you reading? Are you reading? Did you read the packet? You can hand, right? So there's a level where you as a supervisor can help to raise somebody up.
Yes.
But I do agree that there are people that believe if you haven't held their hand 100% of the time while they were doing their job, and somehow you're supposed to hold everybody's hand at the same time, that they believe that you have wronged them in the scenario and they have no responsibility at all for where they're at.
I've had a couple of those that have worked for me. Past, present, and potentially in
The future.
This has been a podcast produced and edited by the Dirt Sailor duo. Mark and Shannon are a father-daughter team who both served in the United States Navy. This production is protected by copyright laws. Until next time, anchors away.